Or you just want to go anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You did my essay.
No later than one.
So I wrote it up in one.
You know if we said that we will be called by
Send it to Reese as well. Reese's feedback was a
to
little
the latest.
Yeah. Mom wants us to walk.
Take
How many free tracks? I just need to change it. So it's like
I've changed.
No.
That's what I do with my tattoos.
I've literally got. Well, we can transfer you money.
It's fine, I don't have comments, so I'll make an opinion that
As long as I can't work. To be fair, it's not that fast. It's not.
I'm not doing that.
It's not, but it's probably
But it's cold.
It's not even that. It's when you're with John and people walking back. It's so frustrating. When I walked it back from work and I walked past the and honestly,
It's so rough like that.
no, you don't.
No, I would.
Oh yeah, you're
She the mom wouldn't.
She literally almost initiated and then
all of it. Somebody was posting that. And that's the whole value of the site.
Okay, that's 5 minutes. People are just going to have to come in. Stick up an answer really quick. Super quick. Do.
Is that what you just said? Oh. Oh.
You said yourself. You said yourself. That's the
None of these answers are correct.
Yeah.
all of us.
Somebody's usually more complex than
Yeah, I know.
Alright.
It's down there.
Left one in the office.
Thing, isn't it?
That's what I was doing most this morning.
But that's like to your comp.
Yeah.
Because that's, yeah. You just.
I bought my girlfriend a Switch.
Complex to define. Cop out. We just trash.
Without the sticks.
Oh, it's a phone this one.
Still.
Yeah.
Be dropping a switch.
It's already. And I was like, down your throat.
That is really
Yeah,
slow.
it's
Also, you can get one switch.
Yeah, there's like a point when you buy these things, basically like care about.
The first time is the tragedy.
15
Exactly.
email thing.
This is the prime.
This is like the first time I dropped this, I absolutely.
What are those Egyptians used to?
Just message it.
What you don't have? Oh, okay.
Abby, what's your name?
What is that? What do people normally say? Okay. I'm now depressed in a profound way. The sort of way that inspires great philosophers to make really depressing shit long books. The sort of way that makes poets write stuff about how dark and fucking terrible their lives are. A medium. Points, medium. That's what medium is. Phenomena A, phenomena B, media sits in the middle of the two. That is all media means. So social media as a type of media sits between 2 points. It is a medium which carries. Mediums carry information of some kind. Which is why some people have raised McLuhan in these answers. This is why McLuhan, in his book Understanding Media, tells us that the light bulb is a medium. How is the light bulb a medium, Leighton? Well, let me explain. We have person A, and there is a medium carrying light, information, and that transforms their relationship to phenomena B, which is the space around. When you turn the light bulb on, you go from darkness into light. Therefore, that is a medium. So, media, plural of medium, is anything which carries information which has a transformative effect on the environment in which we find ourselves in. Media is very, very simple. Don't overcomplicate it. It is that straightforward. So when we are talking about social medium, we are talking about different mediums which communicate information in particular ways. That's all we are saying. But the important point, as McLuhan argued in Understanding Media, is that each medium has a transformative effect on human affairs. So every medium that there has been has some kind of demonstrative effect which changes the nature of society itself. And society cannot go backwards after it. This is why a lot of people will, boomers mostly, say, the world was better before social media came around. The world was better when kids weren't sitting on their phones all day and they were out playing in the streets. Now, I grew up at a time before social media. It wasn't better. It was shit. It was really boring. And we weren't playing in the streets. We were setting fire to like bins and bus stops and small animals and other kids, and it was fucking chaos is what it was, okay? Of course, parents didn't know about this because there was no social media. So there was nobody recording it and putting it on TikTok. So it was great in that sense. Low-level criminality was good before the age of social media. You can't get away with it now. There's always some prick nicking something in fucking co-op, right? So there's some twat recording you. Can't even steal anything anymore. Tesco in the evening. It's epoxy. I'm not paying for a Kit Kat. I'm just not fucking demeaning myself. So, each medium has a transformative effect. The whole point of this module is to understand how social media as a set of mediums has transformed culture. Hence the name social media cultures. And the way we are going to understand that is by you looking at your own cultural practices in a way that you have not done previously. Because the best way of understanding how we've established a culture is to look at how you are shaped by that culture and how your own practices. That is the entire rationale for what we are doing here. So, I'm glad we had this discussion. I feel better about the world. As some of you said, media is an extension of man, according to McLuhan. The medium is the message. Mediums alter our understanding of the world around us, and that is the message of what media are. In social media, we have a radically new set of mediums that McLuhan would term as hot rather than cold of the broadcast age. Cold media, television, cinema, radio, to an extent, more or less. Social media is not a cold medium, it is a medium which encourages interaction. Even if you don't comment, even if you don't like, you are still interacting with. That interaction is still shaping how you see the world itself. What disturbs me most about social media is how it shapes people's understanding of the world around them. It does this in very profound ways. I'll go back to an example of my generation. Everyone I know who has children of my age, early 40s, thinks there's a paedophile on every street corner. Because they all have this nonsense on Facebook, because that's what people of my age use. I refuse to use Facebook because it's full of imbeciles. It says, you know, in some fucking community group they're involved in, dodgy guys standing outside primary school today, be careful. It's like, nearly 90% of sexual abuse of children takes place within the home. The dodgy guy is your husband. That's not the guys. If you were a nonce, you wouldn't stand outside a school. There's a lot of cameras there. It's fucking obvious, you know. You're going to be a criminal. Don't stand in front of the scene of the crime. You're going to get caught. This is, you know, it's like me in Tesco, right? You know, I don't like scope out Tesco all day looking for the opportunity to steal. I just go in and get the fucking job done. I don't have, you know. Don't want to tell you all how to be shoplifters, but if you want to be successful shoplifters, don't spend ages in the shop. That makes you look suspicious. That medium has transformed the way that parents see the outside world. There is no great sexual abuse environment outside. That doesn't exist. Never has existed. The facts tell us that that kind of activity takes place within the home. But the networks in which people are involved in will convince people that there is an issue when that issue doesn't exist. Information will be shared. Anytime something comes up in one of the tabloid newspapers about this guy or that guy, it's shared among them to reinforce this idea that there is a world out there which children need to be protected from. Then, those children reach the age of 14 and 15, and those parents are like, God, I can't get that kid to go outside and do anything. Well, no shit, Sherlock. I wonder why that's the case. It might be that you created the conditions by which they are afraid to even go to the shop by themselves.
Yeah, I mean, especially as a girl, all you hear since you're little is don't stay out late, never go anywhere alone, you know, there's...
Sensible advice.
I mean, yeah, but then again, it's the same
But
time of life.
okay, the threat might be over-egged. I'm not going to contradict advice that says to young women that you should not walk alone at 3 o'clock in the morning around the city centre on your own. I think that's fairly sound advice.
Yeah.
By the way, that would go for men as well. I wouldn't recommend it either. But that's about being safe. That's not a social media thing. I could have told you that 25 years ago as well. That's very sensible advice for people to take.
I did read that a lot of child kidnappers use now social media a lot, and there's also...
To do what? Everyone uses social media a lot.
Yeah. These parents post a lot of stuff like, and it's not only kidnappers, it's thieves as well, you know, because people post a lot of oh, I'm gone on holiday, you know. So basically thieves figure out, you know, the house is empty.
Yeah, this was a phenomena, especially, I mean, you still have this facility on Facebook, right, where you can tag yourself at a particular location.
Yeah.
Yeah. Facebook again stole that from a number of companies like Foursquare and GoWalla. They actually bought GoWalla as a company to have all their data. This was like early 2010s when these services became quite visible, where you could tag yourself in different locations, share pictures of that location within a network of people, of social media, right? And what people were doing was making profiles on them, looking when people were away, looking through their profiles to see where their home was, because inevitably they would tag themselves at home and then go and rob people's houses. Pretty good use of social media, isn't it? If you want to be effective in terms of economics, this is the way to do it, right? You should always be careful about what you put on social media. I think putting your location on social media is a very, very stupid idea. And I would not encourage anyone to do it. I would also wait until you get home before you post your holiday pictures. It's very exciting that you've gone on holiday, and I know you all want to be influencers, and you all want to take photographs of the lovely dinner you're having at wherever resort you're at. Just wait till you fucking get home. Because then, when somebody does try to break in, you'll be there. Now that could end badly, but it could, at least it won't be empty, Interesting. So, we have warm, hot, mediums. What have I got here? Have I asked you to do something else? Oh, fuck off. We haven't got time. I'm way behind here. What is unique about social media is that the content of social media is not given. Where does the content of social media come from?
The users.
The users. Thank you very much. For the first time, ostensibly, in the history of media, we have a medium where the content comes from everyday users of it. Two important points. We don't use the term audience. Social media audiences do not exist. Audience refers to partially the relationship that I'm trying to break down in this lecture. I'm asking a lot of questions. When I was a student, lecturer stands up there, just fucking nonsense for 2 hours. You sit there, and that was the end of it. It was a broadcast relationship. I was part of an audience for that message. There is no such thing as a social media audience. You are a user. User means that you can both receive and create at the same time. And even if that creation is just a comment or a like, it has a mediating effect on the message of the information itself. If I like somebody's post, somebody else will see that and say, oh my God, look, Leighton thinks that's a really good thing. He likes it. I'm going to hate it because I hate Leighton, because Leighton is an unspeakable piece of shit. Yeah. It's just good. Fail already. The audience, in the traditional sense of it, does not exist. So, that is the unique aspect of social media. We are not passive, although we can be. You can choose to be passive in terms of the streams of information you have, but you are empowered to not be passive. And I always get this thing in again, TikTok on my For You page. Endlessly scrolling. But that endless scroll is not a passive activity. I am controlling the length of time I am exposed to particular things. Instantly, if I see something at the bottom and it hasn't got the bar with the time, it's got one and it's creeping along, it's like, fuck that, too long. I want something under 30 seconds. My brain is gone, right? I haven't had Ritalin for weeks. I've got no attention span. Energize. So, I'm looking at this and well, TikTok's responding to that. TikTok is curating the content that I receive to give me shorter information. Because TikTok is saying, algorithmically, there's no one person in TikTok looking at Leighton and thinking, oh, that guy needs more of this stuff. Algorithmically, it's responding to me and providing me with shorter content because it knows, in terms of its advertising revenue, that I am more likely to respond to things which are shorter in length. So I am still active in controlling what is going on in terms of my feed. Now, Tania came up with a really, really interesting phrase in 2018, and it's one that I want you all to emblaze onto your brains. Programmed sociality. Social media is a form of algorithmically controlled social environment. What Tania was arguing is everyday life is now absolutely intertwined with social media, and therefore with the algorithms that control the content on social media. Those algorithms produce, this is what is a very, what we call Foucauldian idea after the French sociologist Michel Foucault. Algorithms produce particular subjects. So, in terms of what we become by using social media, we become an algorithmic subject. Algorithms give us the world, if you like, that we understand. And we respond to the world on the basis of what those algorithms have produced. That is not a technologically determinist answer. Algorithms are not controlling us, they are influencing the way in which we understand the world itself. And it is a two-way process. My activity is reflected in the algorithmic process itself. So when I'm using TikTok and I'm skipping through anything long, because I've got the brain for it at the moment, the algorithm responds to my inputs and adjusts what I see on the basis of that input. So it is a two-way process. It's what we call a socio-technical system. Social processes influence the technology itself. It is not top-down. Those algorithms orientate us to social interactions in particular ways. So our interactions, and when we come off those platforms, are shaped by the interactions we have on those platforms.
But do they also experiment with us? Because sometimes on TikTok I see loads of content that I have not ever had a relation with, and then I see that they appear like a couple of posts that are always on the same genre, but I've never been in contact with that genre. So do they experiment to see how I react to that content and see if they can keep on showing it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All the time. Facebook in particular, I know Facebook is less commonly used now, do something called A/B testing, where they will pair you with somebody that they recognize through the algorithm as being very similar to you. Then, person A, person B, you will get a particular curated news feed, let's say negative, positive. They will then measure the amount of interaction you have with other material on the network during that period of time. So it's called simple A/B testing, where you have two subjects who are given different sets of stimuli, and then you look to see how much interaction and attention they pay on the basis of that setup. What Facebook have found in their A/B testing, which nobody knew about, was that if more negative content you put on someone's feed, the more likely they are to interact with stuff. Facebook deliberately makes you feel sad in order to get you to interact with it. TikTok has a similar kind of process in order to look at your interests, and it will look at the things that you spend the longest amount of time looking at. It will then look at other people who match your profile in terms of demographics and interests and try to see what they like into your For You page in order to develop your interests further. And that doesn't mean like it's trying to get you more interested in stuff. That means it makes you into a more viable data subject to be sold to advertisers. If you can expand that range of things which people are interested in, you have more products that you can sell. It's not, everything comes back to the money at the end of the day, but yeah, and you're right, TikTok in particular, and it's kind of jarring, right? Because you see this one thing and you think, oh, really, that's not my thing. And then it keeps coming back and back and back, and so, fuck off, you know, and I end up searching for other stuff to try and push this other crap out of my For You page. So, yeah, it's a very, very deliberate thing that is done. Now, that thing about A/B testing there is really, really important, because you are never given an unedited view of what is going on in your network. It doesn't matter what network you use. Instagram does not run on a chronological order when you open it. Instagram is curated. There's an algorithm at play that will push certain content to you at the top of that For You page. The purpose of doing that is to orient you in particular ways towards, it's a Facebook company, towards its commercial partners. And all interactions are done in this manner on social media. There is not one social media which is not touched by this kind of algorithmic governance. This then orients our social interactions both on the platform and off the platform in different ways. Because as I argued earlier, these platforms have transformed the way that we socialise and communicate in any case. So our topics of communication with one another are influenced by the algorithmic profiling that we experience on these platforms. What we talk about, how we talk about it, with whom we talk about it, are all a product of the platforms that we use. At this point, you should be thinking, well, I don't use social media enough for that to happen. My response to you is go on your phone and look at how much you use social media. Does everyone know how to do this? Yeah? Don't frighten yourselves.
No, at this point I don't do it.
So, in order to understand social media, we've got a bit of an understanding of the media part. Now let's tackle the difficult thing, the social part. Who in this room has studied sociology? Not nearly enough of you. Fantastic. The social is much more complex than the media part. Social as a concept is really poorly understood as a concept. I wish more people would do sociology at school. I understand why people don't do sociology at school, because it reeks of like some old beardy guy wearing plastic sandals who eats lentils every meal. That is the image of sociology, and do you know what? It's correct. But we do need to understand some basic ideas about social. Basically, and I want you to understand these ideas because you're going to have to include them in your assignments. You're going to have to understand the social in particular ways. Now, I've identified some key theorists here which I think we can work with, but you can go further than this through your reading. Interestingly, I'm just going to skip out of the neopod for a second. When we talk about reading, and I know how much all of you love reading, every book that you need for this module is on a link from Canvas. It is not on Canvas because that would be to break copyright law. So instead, I've put them in a folder in my Google Drive, which you can access. You don't have to say thank you, just think it. Okay, so the ideas of the social. Media are not just technologies. Mediums are not only a technology, because medium, by sitting in the middle of a communication process, means you cannot consider media just as technology. You have to consider the social aspect of what media does. That creates the idea of a socio-technical system. If nobody used a medium, it's not a medium. It doesn't exist as a medium because it's not communicating anything to anyone. There's some people in media studies who would disagree with me about that, and they say, well, computers can talk to computers, so that's a medium. And it's like, shut the fuck up. All right? It is not. That is something different altogether. That is actually a computer system you are describing, not a medium. Medium is a human thing. There is a technological artifact that enables or constrains a particular kind of human activity. And that is what I want you to think of social media like. This idea that different social media enable us to do some things and constrain us from doing other things. There are shapes given to our social processes. One social media will enable us to do something. That's a good thing, possibly, depending on what you're using for. The context then becomes important. But at the same time as something enables you to do something, it stops you from doing something else. It may not be an absolute constraint, as in you can't do this, but it could stop you from thinking about doing something in a different way. So instead of meeting your friend, WhatsApp. Right? WhatsApp's not stopping you from meeting anyone. When you sign up for WhatsApp, you do not have to, in the terms and conditions, it says, you must never meet anyone ever again. That's not there. Does anyone read the terms and conditions?
No.
I'm sure I've signed up at some point to be part of the human centipede. Do you know, on something? It could probably
It's
fucking...
literally the plot of a South Park episode.
Yeah, I reckon it's
I mean,
Snapchat.
there's a whole movie
Snapchat makes you a human centipede. At some point, everyone is going to be sewn up together because you signed up for Snapchat. And, you know, you signed up for Snapchat, that's your own fucking fault.
that would be banned in some countries.
So, social media always.
Yeah, it was.
Technological infrastructure and participating human beings. If you don't have those two things, it is not social media. Let me give you an example of what that means. You're all too young for this, but you might have seen images of it, of MySpace. Has anyone ever heard of MySpace? You've heard of it? Good. 2004 to 2007, MySpace was the thing. Golden age of social media, where you could build retina-burning profiles and have music on them. Great times. What happened to MySpace? Can anyone tell me? Interestingly, it got bought by Rupert Murdoch, but that's not why it disappeared. It was funny what happened to it when the light of that, but it's not why it disappeared. Can anyone tell me what happened to MySpace? Why don't you all have a MySpace account in
I don't know,
2023?
but people migrate to Facebook.
People migrated to Facebook, okay? So what happened to MySpace? People migrated to Facebook. What happened to it?
It went broke, I'm assuming.
It didn't go bust.
If it lost its users, it lost its creation, and
Well,
because if it's
don't overthink, just look at the screen. Social media consists of a technological infrastructure, that still existed, but it didn't have any interacting humans. It got, everyone had left. It stopped being a social media site because there was no one there to interact. So it went from millions of users to a few thousand users within the course of a year. It was a wasteland, it was a desert. There was no one communicating with one another anymore. So eventually it just closes down. What's the point? It's not worth the money to keep the service going. So, this is the interesting thing. A lot of people hate Facebook. Do you know how to stop Facebook? Everyone deletes their account. Everyone did that tonight, it'd be gone tomorrow. It wouldn't exist. But nobody's going to do that, right? Because there's far too many people who rely on it to fill their empty lives. I mean, let's be fair, that's what most people use it for. Okay. This is not my theory. This theory comes from the eminent sociologist Anthony Giddens. Anthony Giddens proposed that we have a dual structure which basically summarises how socio-technical systems interact with us in a society. The duality of structure and agency. So, agency is with actors. We are all actors in society. We act in particular ways which influences the social structures above us. Social media is part of those social structures. But at the same time, the affordances of social media then constrain the ways or enable us to act in particular ways. This is how social media transforms society. We, as a society, decided in the 2000s, we're going to use this technology. We're going to start using social media. We're going to exercise our agency by using these communication media. Those communication media had particular forms of agency for us to enable us to do certain things, like communicate with one another without being in the same room, but also constrain us in particular ways, like we're not allowed to talk about this topic, or we're only allowed to talk about this topic in a particular way, or we're only allowed to take pictures of this but not pictures of that. And those constraints and the developing social norms that come from interaction on those platforms then start to shape society itself. So, it's quite normal in society now not to arrange to meet your friends in the evening, because you don't need to. This has become a norm. This is a socially acceptable way of doing things. It is okay to sit in your room on your own every night talking via your phone. It's true, man. When I was a kid, if you sat in your room on your own every night, you were going to be a murderer. It was obvious. You were going to be a serial killer. No longer, because we can't apply that rationale any longer, because that would mean everyone's going to be a serial killer, and that kind of defeats the point of serial killing, you know? And I'm a great respecter of serial killers because, to be fair, they get the job done, you know? So, I like those guys, you know. That guy, Bundy, he knew what he was doing, you know. Fucking quality ideas, that guy. I'd vote for him. Now, what does this mean? According to the notion of duality of structure, the structural properties of social systems are both medium, so they're a medium, the social systems themselves, and outcome of the practices that they recursively organise. Does anyone in the room know what the word recursive means? I'd be incredibly impressed if somebody did, by the way. It's not a word that's used in parlance very often. So this is not like I'm going to flip because you don't know what this word means. It's a difficult one.
Given the context, I'm assuming it's sort of referring to practices and norms that sort of develop as they use something.
That's a really good answer, Reese. It's a partial answer, it's the beginning of the answer, but that is really good. Okay. Very simply put, I'll give you an example so this will be concrete, okay? Most computer processes are what we call recursive processes. Computers are incredibly different things. Okay? So this thing that you have, very expensive, very nice looking, you know, lovely status symbol, makes me think, oh, she's got money. All the processes that go on it are recursions. Recursive simply refers to something which happens over and over and over again.
It comes from recurring.
Exactly. But recursive in this context comes from social interactions which occur over and over again, and then they become recursive properties of doing something. Now, recursions happen all the time in society, and indeed we are encouraged to do recursive things over time. Yeah, as a species, we are encouraged to do recursive things. You think about your entire education, well, you've got to go here at that time. You've got to study this at that, you know. It's a recursive property over and over again. Recursion is built up into social practices constantly. Now, Giddens was interested that the structure of society itself was recursive. That it is society is structured in recursive ways. That makes society predictable. If you have recursive functions built into society, that makes society very predictable. Governments and states want society to be predictable because that means that it's people living in society aren't fucking setting fire to things all the time, or killing one another, or basically being savage. If we're controlled in a predictable way over and over again, then society itself is easier to manage. Media has played a very important role in developing the recursive functions of society. Media, and if you did media history with me last year, which I think probably all of you did, the role of media and the interventions of the state in particular media, like newspapers, like television, like radio, was there as a form of social control. That you develop particular kinds of content at particular times with particular ways of delivery in order to keep populations pliant and malleable to social control. That is the purpose of media in many ways. All media enable and constrain in particular ways. What we need to get to grips with, or what are we saying we, what you need to get to grips with, is how social media has enabled and constrained you. That is really the purpose of what I'm asking you to do in the assignments, is to understand how social media has shaped you as an individual. In terms of the theorists that I would like you to consider, Durkheim. Emil Durkheim, considered by many to be the father of sociology in many ways. Although I don't agree with that because I think Marx is, but that's just me. Durkheim saw the social as what he called social facts. The social is made up in every way of acting, fixed or not, capable of exercising on the individual an external constraint, or again, every way of acting which is general throughout the given society, while at the same time existing in its own right, independent of its individual manifestations. Basically what Durkheim's saying is the social is the rules. The social is made up of a set of rules and conventions which we follow, or don't follow. If we don't follow them, we are anti-social. But if we do follow them, we are part of society. We are acting in particular ways which are in accordance with society itself. Now, all media and all software are social in the sense that they're products of social processes. Humans and social relations produce them. Social media is social because social structures are encoded in them. Every social media has a set of rules. There are things you can do and you can't do. Yeah? I can't, for example, after a team meeting, go on to Twitter and say, I am brutally, and I use the word correctly, brutally going to murder every one of my colleagues at 1 PM after that team meeting. It is what I want after a team meeting, but I can't do it because then I am breaking the rules, apparently. I don't think. I'm not actually going to do it, but that's how I feel. I guess I could preface that. I feel like I want to murder all these people, but yeah. I'm acting outside the rules. Rules on social media are controversial because social media is not owned by society as a whole. It is owned by private individuals. So, for example, I don't think this would be a good thing, by the way, but I can go topless on Instagram. You know, if you want to see a really bad collection of 20-year-old tattoos, then fantastic. You can't. That's a rule. It's not a rule that I made, it's not a rule, but it's a rule that's been enforced by those who own that platform because they see that female nudity is not something which particular groups of advertisers want to be associated with. Therefore, there is a rule in place that says that women can't be naked on Instagram, but men can. Because that doesn't affect the advertising revenue. Sucks, doesn't it? That's a rule. You can't break the rule. So the social is therefore shaped by those rules. Do we get where I'm going with this now? Yeah? That the rules which are in place for particular forms of conduct shape our social relations and shape what we can do in society. So web technologies of all kinds of social facts, social media as a form of web technology / application technology is such also. Now, another very important sociologist, Max Weber, the social is about social relations. There are two categories to this: social action and social behaviour. What we do and how the manner in which we do it, the behavioural aspect. So action is social insofar as its subjective meaning takes account of the behaviour of others and is thereby oriented in its course. What does Weber mean here? We are social when we act in a way that fits with everyone else's way of acting. Society is made up of particular conduct which fits with an idea of how we should act. Instagram. I'm going to click on Instagram now. Instagram and Snapchat? Do you post the same things on both? Slightly different or majorly different?
I think the stories on Instagram is different to Snapchat.
Okay.
But I think the actual post that you post on Snapchat is like something like that. But Instagram, you just have to post stuff. It's all just like just one thing after the other. So let's see pictures of that.
Carefully curated, yeah. Instagram as a platform has a particular form of activity. We carefully curate the content that we put on there. We utilise not just the facilities that Instagram gives us in terms of filtering and so on, but you may well use other software outside of Instagram to shape that content in particular ways and then post it onto Instagram. So there are a certain set of actions which go on which are acceptable in that platform. Snapchat is a free-for-all. You just post, right? And it's gone. It's actually never gone. I hope people know that. There is no such thing as a disappearing image. It doesn't exist. But the social conventions of that platform dictate that you do not have to be perfect to post on Snapchat. Whereas on Instagram, there are a whole different set of social conventions which say that your image has to meet a particular set of standards. So, our behaviour is oriented by the platform we use. When you are thinking about, right, I'm going to take something sent it by Snapchat, you have a particular pose, you have a particular demeanour, you have a particular thing, and it's less attentive. Instagram, oh, different. Here's where it takes like 45 minutes to take an image, right? You get the fucking ring light out, you know, you've got the hair products, etc., you know, male and female shaving your face, you know, it all happens, yeah.
I'd say for the most part that's true, but let's say on my close friends on Snapchat, if I'm in a private Instagram account with just those people, I'd probably post fairly differently because it's a different group of people. And if I was kept private, I'd probably, yeah.
Only the people that you are comfortable sharing that stuff with.
Yeah.
Private, locked down, and so on. So, a Rinstagram, as we call it, is somewhere where you can post content which is different to on Instagram itself. Yeah. Therefore, social action and social behaviour are still being constrained and enabled by the platform itself. Yeah. So, you are still taking into account at that point who it is visible to, in what particular circumstance that is visible to them as well. And that dictates the kind of behaviour that goes on there. Yeah? This is a very powerful shaping mechanism when we take that away from social media. This informs how we act in different circumstances. I, for example, am supposed to look at this social interaction and think, well, I need to speak in a particular manner to you people, you impressionable young people who pay a lot of money for this. I am not supposed to stand up here and say the word fuck like 40 times in an hour. I am supposed to interact with you in an appropriate manner. I don't care. You know, it's a very different sort of relationship I have with life because, let's be fair, I'm not all there, right? Okay, so this is problematic for people. So, the categories individual and social activity become important here. How we're categorised as an individual and how we act in a social relation. So Weber stresses that in order to constitute a social relationship, behaviour needs to be meaningful, symbolic interaction between human actors. This is where he becomes really important in terms of social media, because everything we do in social media is a symbolic interaction. You are always interacting with people symbolically. We're always trading a form of information, be it an image, a word, a video, etc. It is always symbolic in some way. And always mediated by the platform. I might just finish on time. Maybe. This will be a miracle if it happens. Turnies, the social can be a community. The social means we're part of a community. So, Turnies as a German, these are all dead German white guys as well. The history of Western academia is about dead white German people. I hope you all know this now. The existence of Gemeinschaft or community rests in the consciousness of belonging together and the affirmation of the condition of mutual dependence. For Turnies, the social is the simple fact that we are part of a community. There's always somebody out there say, well, can you not be outside of a community? Can you be like a hermit? Right? And the answer to that is no. There is no such thing as somebody who doesn't belong to society. Because those people who sit or believe they sit outside of society, their entire existence is defined by the fact that there is a society. So if you're some mentalist who lives in the woods and eats fucking leaves or some shit, right? You are, one, a mentalist, but two, your very difference is defined by the fact that this thing exists, and it exists as community. You are defining yourself anti to it. You are not proving that society doesn't exist. In fact, quite the opposite. You're proving society does exist on those terms. You're illustrating it. So, the social is all about community and mutual interdependence upon one another, which have togetherness and values. Finally, Marx, the social is about cooperation, according to Marx. Now, Marx said this particularly in the form of labour, that social came from cooperative work with one another. Because that was what Marx was all about, right? That we're all proletariat and we work together and so on. So, cooperation was the essence of society for Marx, and cooperation through labour in particular. But post-Marxists that have come after Marx himself abstract the nature of labour out of this, and this cooperation is the important thing. Can social media foster cooperation? Well, we've had several examples already today of people talking where it does. That we use social media to coordinate and cooperate. So, cooperation is a foundation of human existence. You can go back to look at these slides if you need to. Finally, Simon. Society is not something abstract. Society is simply the name for a number of individuals connected by interactions. It's not a substance, it's nothing concrete, but it is an event. For Simon, society is the thing that happens when we act in social ways. So society is therefore nothing but lived experience, and social forces are not external to us, but rather internal. So society is simply the interactions that we have. What does that leave us with? What is the social? We have, involves the knowledge processes and cognition of individuals from Durkheim. Involves the symbolic exchange of information through communications relations, Max Weber. Involves communication over time, a cooperation which results in the emergence of shared values and social systems. That's just Turnies and Marx. And involves a series of interactions that themselves can be thought of as foundational for society, according to George Simmons. Social media does all those things. So, in terms of the classical definitions of society from sociology, we have a series of media here which do all these different things that different sociologists have identified as being critical to our understanding of society. My argument, therefore, is, and this is problematic, social media is society. The foundational relations of society as they exist today are social media relations. Even if we don't use social media, that doesn't matter, because it reorganized society in particular ways already. Even in the context of the university, I said earlier, we should have switched to social media communications for students. We should have done that 10, 15 years ago. We haven't done it. The reason why we now see that as a problem is because social media has reorganized society and reorganized societal norms and reorganized the way we think about communication, the way we think about interaction with one another. If it hadn't done that, using email will still be fine. But it has genuinely changed the way we think of social and society. So the university is now like an aberration because its communication systems are antiquated. They don't fit society anymore. The university is aware of this, but it doesn't have an idea of how to fix it. Because the university doesn't have very good ideas. I mean, you've been here a year and a half. I mean, they put a fucking grades in, that's a really bad idea. Because the queue goes for miles. I keep on being barged into by people joining the queue, and then I hit them. And it's really bad for everyone. And I don't even like Greg's. It fucking sucks. And it's more expensive than the one in town.
It is.
By like 20p a thing. What the fuck's that all about? I'm not happy. I'm gonna call Deliveroo to deliver Greg's from the one in town to my office because it's cheaper than going to that one.
And then you have to pay like £3 in
Ah,
delivery fees.
Just claim that back on expenses. So, what do I want you to do with all of this? There's enough information on those slides for you to generate something interesting for your projects. You will see this all the way through the module. The slides are packed. They've got loads of information on them, with references, with page numbers and everything. And you can pick up that stuff and use it as you see fit. What I want you to do first up, before you start thinking about what it is you're going to do, is think about that idea. What does social mean? Because it's the one thing we don't think about. We don't think about social when we talk about social media. It's right there in the title, but we never think about it. What does it mean? These are some leads for you to think about. You're not going to come up with a definitive answer. Sociologists haven't, why should you? But there are lots of different strands to that notion of the social that social media comes around. Now you may want to concentrate, for example, on how you communicate with others. Symbolic exchange of information. You may want to think about how social media fosters community for you. So you might want to look at Marx and Turney's, for example. You might want to think about how it's been transformative in terms of thinking about society for you. So you might want to look at what Simmel has to say. Yeah? So I'm giving you some direction in which you can take those thoughts.